Explore the power of Salesforce LWC with Lightning Input, Input Address and Dual ListBox, your gateway to dynamic and interactive components. Welcome everyone. In today's session, we are going to talk about standard LWC components, and this is part 1. So without wasting any time further, let's proceed with the video. Lightning Web Components provide you plenty of standard Lightning Web Components tag which you can utilize to build your own Lightning Web Components. One of the important and key tag is Lightning Input tag. Now Lightning Input actually creates the same HTML input component. That means it creates a component where user can enter values as in form of a form. Now this component supports different types of input like checkbox, checkbox button, date, time, email, file, password, search, telephone, URL, number, text and toggle. Now we can use any of these types by specifying the type attribute in the Lightning Input element and specifying the value to that type attribute. Now all these names that are written in form of a table are nothing but valid value to the type attribute of the Lightning Input tag. Now if you won't specify any value to the type attribute, definitely you will get a text box. So let's quickly go to the Visual Studio Code and create a Lightning Input tag. So guys, here I am on the Visual Studio Code, and to create a new LWC, I will right click on the LWC folder and click on Create Lightning Web Component. Provide a name to it, so I am giving it a name Standard Component 1 and press enter. Choose the default location and you can see my Standard Components 1 LWC is created. I am selecting the test folder and deleting it. Now let me first open the meta file and expose this. So I will make is exposed as true. Then after I will add targets, and within targets I will add a target. Now while entering the target, you can directly press return key. So it will not only create the target element, it will also provide the default value into it. It will also provide some value into it. Now you can choose where you want to target this specific component. I want to target it to the app page. Now just click on save. So our meta file is ready. Now let's go to the HTML part. Now in the HTML part, I can easily include a Lightning input over here. So you can see I just included a Lightning input element and I haven't included any attribute to it. Now let me click on save and let me deploy this. So once the LWC is deployed successfully, let's quickly go to the org and add it to our app page. So here's our org, and you can see this is our first app page, and I'm going to include that specific component on this page itself. So I will click on the gear icon, right click on the edit page and open a new tab. Now on the new tab, it will open the Lightning App Builder. I will just collapse the standard one, and from the custom one, I can find the standard components one. Let me drag and drop it to the third one. And here you go. Now it is showing something to me over there, but let's save and go back to the page and check it out over there. So after saving, let's go back to the app page one more time and refresh it. So you can see my Lightning Web Component is there. Now you can see a small box, but it is actually not just a simple box, it's a text box. So you can click over here and you can actually type something inside it. So with the help of Lightning Input, I can create a component that can accept some input from the user. Now what sort of input or in which form I want to accept input, that thing I can decide with the help of type attribute. And if you won't mention anything to the type attribute, by default it will treat it as a text box. Now Lightning Input attributes. So there are plenty of attributes that we can use with different types of input tags. Now one of the initial attribute that you should provide over there is the type attribute. Now the value of this type attribute decides what type of input tag you want to include over there. And the valid values for this type attribute are all those values which I mentioned in the previous slide in that table. Next is label. Label is the text label of that input component. Now to every component you want some label to appear in front of it, right? Now that label can be provided as a label attribute to this specific component. Next is value. Value specifies the value of an input element. Name specifies the name of an input element, which can be used later on in the JavaScript to take a reference of that specific component. Variant is basically used to decide the variant of this specific component. Now there are different values that you can provide to the variant, including label inline, label hidden and label stacked. Now all these different variants actually decide how a label will appear with the component. Now when I will provide these values over there, you will find the difference. Read only, a property which can make a component as a read only component, so you cannot make any edit over there. And required, if this specific is present, the input field must be filled out before the form is submitted. So let's check out these attributes on the component that we have included over there. So guys, here we are on our VS Code, and let me start including those attributes. So the first attribute that I'm including over here is type attribute. So definitely we can provide a text to it, or we can provide a checkbox to it. And let me also use a date over here. So I have created 3 lightning input with 3 different types. So let me save this, right click, deploy. And once deployed, let's go back to the org and check out the changes. So here I am in the org. Now to reflect back the changes, I will right click, click on inspect. And now I will right click on the refresh button and click on empty cache and hard reload. So after that, you can clearly see instead of 1 box, there are 3 rectangular boxes. 2 are very big, 1 is very small. The first one is a text box, right? The second one is a check box, so you can apply a check mark over there. And third one is a date time picker, from where you can select any specific date. So these are the changes of type attribute on that lightning input tag. Let's check out the label over there. Okay guys, so now you can see I have included label attribute as well. So there is a label attribute over here with some values in each of the component. Now let me deploy this and check out the effect of the label attribute. So here I am back to the org. Let me right click, click on empty cache and hard reload. And now you can see in front of the component, actually at the top of the component and sometimes in front, you can see a specific text over there. This is nothing but the label that you specified. So label will actually help you to understand what is the purpose of this specific component. Now if you remember, I was also telling you about a variant attribute. So with the help of variant, you can change the position of these labels. So let me try to do that. So here in individual elements, I'm going to use some more properties. So what I will do is the closing tag of individual element, I will keep it in new line. And then these attributes of individual tags, I will provide it in separate lines. So in this way, this will also help us to read and understand what this component is having different values. Now I'm going to use variant over here. So the first variant I will use label inline. I will change the attribute in new lines in all the components. The second one is label hidden, and the third one is label stacked. So you can see I have used different variants over here. Let me deploy it again. Right click, click on empty cache and hard reload. And now you can see the difference of it. In case of label inline, the label will appear at the left of the component by providing some space in between. In case of label hidden, it will not show label at all. And in case of label stacked, it will show at the top of that, which is the default value as well. So that's how you can utilize your variant with a lightning input. Now this variant attribute is available with most of the standard Lightning Web Components tags, and we will see that later down the line. Now let's talk about value attribute. So if I'm providing value and I provide any value to it, for example, Amit Kumar over here, to this checkbox I am not providing any value, and to this date of joining also I am providing a value. Like I mentioned, 2024-12-01. Now let me save this, deploy it, and then go back to the org. On the org, I will right click over here, click on empty cache and hard reload. And now you can see because of this value that I have specified over there, these values are appearing over here as well. So value is an attribute that can be used with the components if you want to provide any value to those components. What if I make them required? If you make any field as required, let's suppose I make the date of joining as required. So you can write it as required is equals to true, or you can simply mention required only, both will work. So I'm using required is equals to true because I'm providing value with all the attributes, so that will look similar and standard. Now let me deploy it again. And now you can see an asterisk symbol in front of date of joining. Because of this asterisk, if I will try to submit this form and if no value is provided over here, it will show an error. So basically required is used when you are submitting a form and you want to make a field as a required field. Now what if I make any of the field as read only or disabled? So basically at high level they both seems to be similar. Whether you are making it read only or whether you are making it disabled, you will not be able to edit that specific field. But there is a small difference between them, and let me show you directly. So I will make the name as read only and the date of joining as disabled. Okay guys, so right now you can see I have made read only to the name one, and made it true, and disabled to the date of joining and made it true. So one of them is read only and the other one is disabled. Now let me deploy this and go to the org and check out the differences between them. On the org, I will right click on empty cache and hard reload, and now you can see one of them is disabled, so I'm not able to even take my mouse pointer over there. Now let me click on this and press tab, so it is not moving ahead. Let me click on this, press shift tab, so it is going back. Now the thing is, if any field is read only, the focus of the user can go to that specific field, though the user will not be able to edit it. But if a field is disabled, even the user focus will not go there. In fact, when I will submit this form and submit the value somewhere else, the values of the read-only field will be submitted, but the value of the disabled field will not be submitted. So there is a basic difference between read-only and disabled. So keep a note of that. Some more Lightning input attributes are like message when value missing. Now this will contain an error message to be displayed when the value is missing. Now the value missing error can be returned when you specify the required attribute of any input type. So if you make any input type as required attribute, and if you don't want to show the general message over there, and if you want to show a specific custom message, then this specific attribute message when value missing will be used. Definitely I'm not showing it today, but I will show you in one of the future videos how we are going to use it. Min and max are used to specify minimum value and the maximum value that can be included in a component. Now these two attributes cannot be used on all the components, but there are few data types or there are few types of Lightning input where we can use it. So I will mention you about that in a while. Checked attribute is basically used with checkbox, and if you will pass checked is equals to true, definitely that specific checkbox will appear as checked. There is a disabled attribute. I have already talked about it and shown you the difference. There is one field level help. It shows a help text detailing the purpose and function of the input. Now this attribute is not supported on file, toggle or checkbox button. So these three types of Lightning input, we cannot use field level help, but on the rest of them we can certainly use a field level help. Now if I talk about min and max, they are supported on number, range, date, time and date time. Now if we are using it for date, time and date time, then definitely we can specify string, the date, time, whatsoever we want to specify. The minimum and maximum value is specified as in form of a string. But in case of number or a range, we can basically use decimal numbers to represent the min and max value. The next element that we are going to talk about is Lightning input address. Now Lightning input address component creates a compound field. It's a compound field because it is combination of plenty of fields over there that will help you to include street, city, province, country and postal code. So by just including this specific single tag, you can accept values of all of them. Now out of all these fields, the street field will be the only multi-line field where you can enter multiple lines. For the rest of them, that will be single text input field. Now let me show you how Lightning input address works. So here we are on our VS Code and you can see I have included Lightning input address field over here. Now to the Lightning input address field, we provide some attributes with help of which we specify what type of label will appear to that specific component part. For example, this specific component contains street, city, country. So we have to specify label of all of them. So let me quickly do that and get back to you. And also we can mention an address label. Address label will be parent of all these small components. So that will be the main label. So let me mention address label and let me mention it as permanent address. So everything is created successfully. Let me right click, click on deploy. Let's go back to the org, right click, click on empty cache and hard reload. And here you can see the permanent address is the address label, and then you can see all the rest of the components over here. So only one of them, which is the street, is accepting multiple line. The rest of them is accepting single line. So that's how you can use Lightning input address. Now the next component that we are going to talk about is Lightning Dual ListBox. Now you have seen this dual list box a lot of time on the Salesforce interface. It provides you two separate boxes. One is named as available option, other is named as selected option, and you can choose more than one options from the available to the selected side. Now the same kind of component you can use in your LWC with the help of Lightning Dual List Box. A Lightning Dual List Box represents two side-by-side list boxes. You can select one or more option in the list on the left to the list on the right. You can move the selected option from the left to the right, and the order of the selected option is maintained, and you can reorder these options as well. So Lightning Dual List Box actually allows you to do multiple selections and even change the order of those selections over there. Now let me show you how we will create a Lightning Dual List Box. So here we are on our VS Code, and you can see I have included a Lightning Dual List Box. Now to this Lightning Dual List Box, I can include plenty of labels. Now there will be a main label over there which will let you know what kind of values are there available in the Dual List Box. So I am naming it as subjects. So the attribute is label, and I am naming it as subjects. The next attribute is source label. Now source label will be the label of the list box on the left side. So I am naming it as available subjects. And similarly, there is a selected label. Selected label attribute shows to the label of the list box on the right side. So I am naming it as selected subjects. And then we need to provide options. Now these options will be nothing but a list of options. Okay, so right now I'm providing the list of options over here as in form of a variable. Now if you remember, in the previous video I told you that any variable that you created on the JavaScript side can be used on the HTML side by just naming the variable and keeping it inside curly braces. So here the value of these options I can include with the help of a curly brace and a name inside over here. Let me mention it as language options. So to this options attribute, I specified the value, but the value that I specified over here is with the name of a variable. Okay. Now let me remove these options for a while and deploy it before showing you the options. And on the OR, I will right click and click on empty cache and hard reload. You can see a dual list box over here. The left side is showing available subjects, the right side is showing selected subjects, and the main label is subjects. Now it is not showing any value or any options over here. The reason is I haven't provided any options. Now this options attribute is basically used to provide the options. Now how we can provide the options to it? So for that we have to go to the JS part, and in the JS part you have to create this language options variable. Now this variable will be actually an array, and not just a normal array. It will be an array of objects. So I will create an array, and each element of this array will be an object. Now this object will contain two things. One is label and one is value. So there will be a label property and there will be a value property. Now let's suppose to the label I am providing language option. Instead of language option, I should have mentioned it as subject option because I named it as subject. So I renamed it as subject option. Get back here, change it to subject option, and I will provide a label to the first subject. Let's suppose C language, and I will provide a value to it as well. Let's suppose C language only. Now the label will represent what will be shown over there on the list box, and value will represent what will be returned when you will select that label. So label will be something that will be visible on the user interface, and value will be something that will be returned when user will select that specific label. So I'm including only three. So I'm including only three subjects over here: C language, C++ language, and Java language. And the values I will change accordingly. And to the last one I will remove this comma. So I have created an array of objects where each object will accept two properties, one label, one value. And in fact I am making one more change. I am making the change in value and label. For example, if the label is C language, value is C only. If the label is C++ language, value is C++. And if the label is Java language, value is Java. So that you can understand whether it is showing the label or whether it is showing the value. That's why I distinguished them. That's why I made them different. Now I'm back to the org, right click over here, click on empty cache and hard reload. And here if you scroll down, you can see all those options are shown over here. And you can see only labels are shown over here, not the values. So I can select, click on this, and it will come here. I'll select, click on this, and it will come here. Even I can select them and change the order. Or I can deselect them as well. So that's how dual list box works. So guys, that marks the end of this session. See you soon in the next session. Till then, thank you and take care.